Army veteran Duane France decided to enter the mental health field upon retiring from the Army after 22 years. On episode 146 of Veteran on the Move, Duane shares the lessons learned from his experience working in mental health and how he continues to serve veterans by providing mental health services and military-style leadership to veterans.
Welcome to Veteran on the Move. If you're a veteran in transition, an entrepreneur wannabe, or someone still stuck in that JOB trying to escape, this podcast is dedicated to your success. And now, your host, Joe Crane.
The top 7 paths to freedom is my free gift to you for listening to the show, featuring 7 great ways for a veteran to take their first step into the exciting world of entrepreneurship. To receive your free gift, go to veteranonthemove.com, or if you're listening on a mobile device, you can text the word veteran to 38470. Duane France is a retired Army NCO, combat veteran, and mental health counselor practicing in the state of Colorado. He works exclusively with veterans as the Director of Veteran Services for the Family Care Center, an outpatient mental health clinic that specializes in working with service members, veterans, and their families, as well as the Executive Director of the Colorado Veterans Health and Wellness Agency, an affiliated 501c3 nonprofit that provides mental health counseling services to veterans without any means of support. Duane also writes for an audience of veterans, their family members, and the communities in which the veterans live on his blog, which is www.veteranmentalhealth.com. All right, Duane France, welcome to Veteran on the Move. Thanks for being here and sharing your entrepreneurial story. Before we get to talking about business and entrepreneurship, why don't you take us back and tell us what you did in the Army?
Well, thanks, Joe. I was in the Army for 22 years, retired a couple years ago. Spent a lot of time in Germany in the 82nd. Spent quite a bit of time here at Fort Carson. So I was in logistics while I was in specifically motor transport operator. Was one of those quirks of fate that when I went to the recruiter and went to the MEP station and said, just give me the first thing smoking that gives me maybe a bonus and stuff, and they hooked me up. They hooked me right up into a logistics field. So I spent most of my career trying to chase a little bit. I did a lot of light infantry support. Ended up the last couple years of my career with 10 Special Forces Group. During my career, deployed to Iraq once, one of those nice 15-month tours, 2 Afghanistan tours, Bosnia way back in the last century in the mid-90s, and then finished out a tour with 10th Group at the end there in North Africa for about 4 months.
Yeah, sounds like you spent your fair time deployed time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there wasn't a time between 2006 and 2013 of my last deployment, there wasn't a year that I wasn't deployed at least some portion of the year, and for quite a few of them the entire year. So I really kind of top-loaded a lot of my deployment time towards the end of my career. Yeah,
that's really kind of the way it was with me. I was active my first 8 years, then drilling reserve for 3 years, and then when I went back active reserve, and it seems like at least all the combat deployment time and all that happened at the end, and hardly anything seemed to happen in the beginning. But, it's a sign of the time. So, so what was your transition like? You actually retired from the Army. What was that like, and what did you end up doing coming out of the Army?
So I actually was leaning pretty far forward in the foxhole in doing what I wanted to do. When I was in Iraq in 2007, I was already an E7 Sergeant First Class, and I hadn't had a degree yet. You really kind of focusing on the military career at that point, and didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. Really didn't have. even back then, 7 years before retirement, I didn't even think that I would get out. But I had one of my guys came in, E5, and he showed me his diploma, and he was like, "Oh, I just got my associate's degree." He turned to me and he said, "What's your degree in, Sergeant?" And I said, "None of your business." And he just kind of, it kind of spurred me into really looking at, okay, I got to figure something out. So I called the education center and started doing some distance learning, even from where I was in Iraq. And at that point, I kind of saw myself as a history teacher, or one of those cool English teachers that would interrupt and listen to war stories and never get any homework done. I really didn't think that mental health was even something that I was interested in. So I started off a basic associate's degree in counseling and applied psychology. Then when I returned from Iraq, we had in our kind of redeployment exercise there was a retired major. She was a mental health counselor at the vet center here in Colorado Springs. And she said, if any of you are interested in psychology and mental health in any way, you really need to look at the mental health field because there are not enough combat veterans as counselors. And it was really one of those serendipitous moments. Just happened to be that she was in a room saying something, and it kind of sparked something in me. So really, I started looking at this. I knew that I wanted to be a mental health counselor after I retired, but not really knowing what that path was. So then even finish up my associate's degree, my bachelor's degree. I was doing a lot of this stuff distance. When I was in Afghanistan both times, started it the first time and finished up when I was in a MIT team in Kabul the second time. Did some my master's program while I was in through distance while I was in North Africa. So I knew what I wanted to do as far as clinical mental health counseling, but it's a really kind of a making sure you hit all the right steps. So once I got back from North Africa in the beginning of 2013, my wife and I decided, it's about time to slow things down and look towards retirement. And I started doing a lot of strategic volunteering, different nonprofits and doing some things. And it happened to be when I was in a meeting with someone that I heard about a job that wasn't advertised to be a program manager for a housing program for homeless veterans. So it was a nonprofit that basically it all boiled down to running the barracks. That was pretty much the basic thing. And so it's, platoon sergeant, first sergeant, I've got that. So I ended up, I spent about 18 months in that agency that kind of overlapped my retirement while I was finishing up my degree and getting my degree requirements. And then June of last year, I transitioned to working as a full-time mental health counselor for veterans.
So can you tell us a little more about the details of running the housing project for the homeless veterans and how that was?
Yeah, absolutely. The program was called the Crawford House, and it was a program that was run by an agency, a 501c3 nonprofit called the Colorado Veterans Resource Coalition. And they have a contract with the local VA to provide housing for veterans for the short term that are going through the VA's homeless program. But also we had a contract with the VA to provide housing for veterans going through substance abuse treatment. So it was really interesting because I saw kind of two different sets of veterans, and I really got to work closely with veterans who were struggling in a bunch of different ways. And it's not just homelessness doesn't happen in a vacuum. None of it really happens in a vacuum. It's not just that all of a sudden the veteran's homeless. There's also employment stuff and things. And so while I was there, I was the program manager for the actual housing portion. Did a lot of working with a lot of other local community organizations that supported veterans. Obviously, a lot of grant writing and kind of outside the box thinking of trying to figure out how to work fund development. And so it was really a very interesting way to kind of transition from being a senior NCO in the Army to really kind of running a program. I had actually, as I was considering it, thinking what I was going to do, and I ran into a buddy of mine who he and I were first sergeants together a few years prior, and he was working for a nonprofit that provided employment services for veterans. And he said, especially senior NCOs and officers, when you get out, find a cause, do something good. You sleep so much better at night when you're working for something that provides meaning and purpose. And so the 18 months that I spent there was really an eye-opening experience in it, especially in the Army. We say, accomplishment of the mission and welfare of the soldier. And it was a way for me to carry my care for the soldier and really concern, welfare for the veteran while I was there at the Crawford House.
Yeah, I mean, I've always said, and this is just me talking, not being any kind of an expert about mental health, but I'm a little bit of an expert about veterans. I think one of the biggest causes of veteran suicide, mixing with a bunch of other things, the main underlying cause is when somebody loses their sense of purpose. They don't have a reason to get up in the morning.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, it's hopelessness and despair. That's really kind of the baseline whenever that veteran gets in that place where they don't see anything beyond the immediate problem. The problem with veteran suicide, it really has to do with the matter of time, and it's a very immediate thing. There could be all of these different things that lead up to it, but at that moment when the veteran's in the most despairing and depressed place, if their hopelessness is overwhelming and they don't see anything in the future, then yeah, that's where it can kind of tip the scales. So that sense of meaning and purpose is one of the huge aspects of what some veterans find challenging with the transition.
Yeah. So how long did you end up staying with the Crawford House, and what did you end up working into after that?
So I was at the Crawford House for just over 18 months, and while I was there, I was also working at the agency where I'm at now, finishing up my master's program in clinical mental health counseling, and doing intern work. So as a mental health counselor, you have to have really it's about 1,500 hours of direct counseling experience before you even graduate. So I'd been providing counseling services, therapy services for veterans really almost for the entire time that I was at the Crawford House. But that was really more of my side thing. And as I was getting ready to leave there, the agency said, hey, we'd like to bring you on kind of part-time. And I had my foot in kind of both worlds. And at the Crawford House, that's much more what would be typically considered social work, case management type stuff. And there really wasn't the ability to get into kind of long-term, helping veterans solve their problems in a deep way. And so I ultimately decided that as great as it was there, that I would move towards taking on counseling and therapy full time. So through some changes, but right now the agency, it's a large private outpatient counseling firm called the Family Care Center of Colorado Springs. When I came on, my main focus was to provide counseling services for our local Veterans Court program. So there's veterans courts kind of all around the U.S. now, but we have one of the first ones that was here in Colorado. That's the 4th Judicial District Veterans Court. So say, Joe or, somebody goes downtown and breaks out a bunch of windows or something, or gets drunk and does what we know that sometimes, soldiers or veterans do. Then they find themselves in the back of a cop car, kind of crosswise with the law. And usually there's environmental and experiential reasons for that. And so these veterans courts, they allow the veteran to come into the program and receive the mental health counseling that they probably should have received or didn't have the ability to access. And in return, they may get a deferred sentence or, a lot of them, they avoid Department of Corrections time and things like that. So that was my main focus. I've been working with justice-involved veterans really since the beginning of 2014. But after the Crawford House, I really took that on more full-time.
And when you say the veterans courts, I mean, there's actually a court system set up for veterans. I think I've seen like a LinkedIn group or something called Veterans in the Courts or something like that.
Yeah, Veterans in Justice. There are a couple of, but in each, and not each, but in a lot of jurisdictions, there is a separate problem-solving court for veterans. It's about the mid-'90s, the judicial system set up like drug courts, and so it's a diversionary program. But they now have one specifically for veterans, and ours has been in place since kind of 2009. And even that, incidentally, is some of what spurred me on to doing what I was doing, because about the same time when I had somebody kind of put the bug in my ear, I saw this thing about Veterans Court, and I'm thinking, those guys are going to need a mental health counselor that understands the military and knows what it's like.
Right.
And so I was really kind of tracking along. So yeah, it's a really, really great program.
Yeah, I had no idea it was actually a formalized program. And of course, you always see in the movies where the judge wants to cut the veteran some slack or whatever, or, put him back inside the glass cage and, break when there's war. But that's what I think of. But I had no idea there was actually a formalized court system set up for the veterans. So if you're a veteran and you get in trouble, I guess, is that going to come out, in your hearing, or is it going to come out that, oh, by the way, this guy's a veteran, so we may want to run him through this system? I mean, how does that actually happen?
One of the good things with a lot of the Veterans Court that's different from other problem-solving courts is that they have a mentor program, that there are volunteers, usually staffed through another nonprofit, that are veterans themselves who help veterans find out about this program. There's a lot of different programs around the U.S., and so I can speak specifically towards ours. We've got a retired sergeant major who is the lead peer mentor, and his job is to screen a lot of the veterans for inclusion into the process, but also to kind of help the veterans while they're in the court, just with some of that life stuff and kind of peer-to-peer support things. So our peer mentor and I work closely with them. Here in our local El Paso County Criminal Justice Center, on average, there's anywhere from 150 to 200 active duty or veterans in the jail on any given day. We have enough for our own ward, essentially, that there is a ward in our jail that consists of nothing but veterans. The deputies there are veterans. And so the peer mentor and I, we go in and we talk to these guys and try to help them figure out where they might have slipped to the left or slipped to the right a little bit into a bit of a danger zone. And then, not everybody wants to come into the Veterans Court. Not all of them are eligible to come in the Veterans Court. So it's really a screening process. But then when they come in, it's definitely a different setup than what a regular kind of a court would be.
Do you find, in dealing with a lot of these guys that are in that system, do you find that for the most part, the fact that you're both veterans, there is a difference in dealing with them and getting them through their issues and troubles? Or a lot of time they just end up being like anybody else?
No, I think there is a lot to be said about having and I don't want to say being a veteran who is a mental health counselor, but just a mental health counselor who understands the military, who is, and I call it cultural competency. A lot of us in the field consider it to be cultural, because the military is a different culture. We have a different way of dressing, a different way of speaking, a different mindset. I often say it's as if I went to go live in Ireland for 22 years and then tried to come back and live in the States. We would still be speaking English, but I would be immersed in a different culture. Mm-hmm. So having that basic understanding of what veterans, I can find Bakuba on a map. I know where the Arghandab Valley is. Just having that kind of, I understand kind of thing. My office almost looks like a retired first sergeant's office rather than your typical therapist's office, with beach scenes. And guys, they'll come in and they'll sit down. And a lot of times they'll sit down with me. And on the first day we meet, they want to tell me about the worst day of their lives. They're so ready and eager to speak when they haven't talked for so long. And I said, let's slow down and let's get some coping skills and let's figure out, become more aware of what's going on, why you're doing the things you're doing, and then see if you can change. So I think that does have a lot to do with it, but I also don't believe that someone has to be a veteran to do that. I've got a lot of colleagues that I work with both at my agency and that I've met that they're not veterans or they're not spouses of veterans, but they've taken the time to learn and understand and get to know that culture. So it's not so much the fact that the therapist or the mentors are veterans, but that they focus on understanding what the veteran goes through. And so we find that does kind of break down a lot of the barrier. And especially in our court, we're not the only veterans. Our head judge, Judge David Shakes from the 4th Judicial District here, he's an OIF vet. So he was in the JAG Corps, and he was in Iraq in, I think, 07, 08. So he knows what it's like. We have members of the court team and the court staff that are both veterans, or they've worked with veterans so long that they've really come to understand what veterans are like. So developing a team that understands what the veteran is looking for, what the veteran needs, and the unique mental health needs, especially for the veterans, that's key. Absolutely.
Now, so your work with the veteran court system, does that have something to do with the Family Care Center of Colorado Springs, or is that something additional that you're doing?
No, so we're contracted with probation to be able to provide those services. So the Family Care Center is a private agency that we're contracted with probation. One of the unique things about our program is that our court program will accept veterans even with bad paper. So the other non-honorable discharge, bad conduct discharges, dishonorable, although I've not seen any dishonorable discharges and only 2 BCDs. But
they're pretty hard to get.
BCDs and dishonorables both come from court martials, and usually a lot of veterans will dodge the court martial and get out in a different way, which is how a lot of OTHs maybe.
Right.
So those veterans and also active duty veterans that don't qualify for the VA. So we see probably about a quarter, maybe about 20% of the clients who are in the veteran court system in where we're at, because most of them go to the VA here with our local VA. So we work closely with our local VA to provide support for those veterans that aren't eligible. Maybe they need more frequent care, and especially like the active duty veterans that aren't eligible. So we're much more in a supportive role, kind of covering the gaps that the local VA mental health can't provide.
Okay. And then you're also doing some work with the Health and Wellness Agency, which is a nonprofit.
Right. So, and that really kind of grew out of what we were seeing with the Veterans Court. See, I was getting guys, once they're in front of the judge and now they're on probation, they would jump into treatment. They'd be like, where has this been all my life? However, if they weren't in the court system, then they wouldn't have the resources to be able to access care. So at the beginning of this year, we received a grant to be able to provide mental health counseling services for veterans who are not in the judicial system but can't receive care or don't have resources to receive care elsewhere. So consider a young Marine or a soldier that gets out after 2 tours, 6 or 8 years or something like that. They don't have TRICARE. They're not medically retired. The only resources they have are VA. And maybe they don't access the VA. They don't reach out to the VA. And so they still have the same 2 or 3 deployments in their 6 or 8 years, and they're still dealing with the same challenges. And yet we can't get them services until they break the law. So we thought there was something fundamentally wrong with that. And so we got a grant, and we established a 501c3 nonprofit arm. So we're affiliated with the for-profit agency. And so I run that piece that's a grant-based program where a veteran can come in and receive mental health counseling in order to bridge the gap until they can get their long-term care squared away.
Okay, so with all the experience you've had in the mental health industry in that space, I do want to ask, do you think you've found your home and your place, and you're glad you went into that area?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think that, I was talking to somebody the other day, I could see myself doing this for the next 20 years. This is really very much an extension of that caring for soldiers, caring for veterans, that was really my focus while I was in the military. And it's the interesting thing, a lot of people look at, what you were in the military. They look at me and said, oh, you were a truck driver, you were in logistics, had nothing to do with mental health. But I've been sitting down under the shade tree or take a knee, Joe, how things been going. We've been doing that since we were leaders. There's a leadership aspect, a mentorship aspect to what we do. And then, of course, just understanding, knowing what it's like to get your world rocked by a dishka, or, know what the snap of the bullets sound like, that kind of learned experience. And then the clinical training that I received, kind of putting the two of them together. I have definitely seen some veterans come to the point of awareness to say, you know what, I can put everything that happened in the past in its proper place. I can appreciate the good stuff. I can deal with the bad stuff, and I can get up and move forward with my life. So I absolutely feel like I landed in the place that I was meant to be.
And, you've actually kind of taken an entrepreneurial approach to things. And before we started our discussion, we were talking about that. You've seen, working for the Crawford House and then the Health and Wellness Agency, which are both nonprofits. You're working for them. You're working with the court systems. So you really get to see government, the VA, nonprofits in the private sector, all in action, trying to assist and provide help to these veterans. And you really see a lot of entrepreneurial ideas and entrepreneurial attitudes and mentality that are taken towards trying to solve these problems. It may not result in trying to make big money at a corporation or something like that, but it results. It gets results, and it's
right.
It's viewed as success.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that when everybody thinks be an entrepreneur and being entrepreneurial, it is to make the money or all this other stuff, but the money is just a goal. And so really using entrepreneurial skills, kind of that outside the box thinking, let's look for different funding resources. Let's find different partners. Let's do a strategic partnership with this agency, that agency. It's just working towards a different goal. And really sometimes that goal may be personal satisfaction. But ultimately it's a matter of, for me, I don't want to see a veteran homeless debtor in jail. That's kind of and I know for a fact that there's no way that I'm going to be able to solve solve all the problems, but to be able to reach that goal. And that's what a lot of people, and this is when I first started getting into the nonprofit field, and they were like, oh man, you can go do this and you could go do that. But I didn't want to do any of that. I really took a hard look and what did I want to do and what pleased me and what satisfied me the most, and still using a lot of that entrepreneurial spirit. And really the kind of the 18 months that I spent at the Crawford House, I saw all of these different methods of operation of agencies. And then when I had the opportunity to establish this, I kind of took all of the best ideas from 3 or 4 of them. And it will continue to grow and continue to merge, and other people will come in. But yeah, I really do see a very big correlation between an entrepreneurial spirit and getting and solving problems in the community, not just in mental health, but other agencies doing the same thing.
And would you recommend that there's a lot of veterans going through transitions or soon to be, and they want to get involved in this entrepreneurial type thing, but they may not be focused on, trying to make a lot of money at it, but they want to be involved in veterans issues and solving problems. Is the mental health space a place that you would recommend for them?
Well, I mean, that's I am very much taken a little farther than kind of most. I started off, I went from an associate's degree to a master's degree in something like 9 years or something. So it was very much a kind of a long view for me. But then again, it's also never too late. If somebody's sitting here saying, "Oh, I could see myself doing that," or this sparks an interest. Maybe they already got a bachelor's degree, or maybe they want to pivot to doing something else in their career. It's not too far out of the realm of possibility. But really just any kind of nonprofit work, especially for senior NCOs or officers, we get our retirement, maybe, especially me jumping out of airplanes 38 too many times. There's some VA disability that comes in. And so, we have the ability to maybe take a job that is just comparable to our pay when we were in the military. It's not making us daddy warbucks or anything, but it pays the bills, but we get a huge return on the sense of satisfaction. So I think a lot of people think, I'm not going in the nonprofit field because, you don't make any money. Is that the most important thing you're looking for? But B, there's also some misconceptions about that. So if they're, especially, again, senior guys and senior girls that are looking to do something meaningful and carry on that sense of purpose, really take a hard look at different nonprofits that you could start to work with.
And it's really a much better way to go, especially if you're somebody that's getting out and you're kind of doing some soul searching. If nothing else, it might be a really good way to reorient yourself and refocus on, and maybe actually discover what it is you really want to do, instead of just jumping into that first job that's going to help you pay the bills, where it fills your bank account and drains your soul.
Oh yeah, no, I hear a lot, especially from some of my peers in the community, that they were like, I got out and I went to go work for a bank, and the bank that I went to go work for, it was good money, but I'm sitting here having to give a loan to a PFC, or an E4 calls me up and says, I want to get, a $40,000 loan to buy this Lamborghini. And I, as a leader, wouldn't want him to do that. But yet I, as a banker, need to, fair lending practice, I have to do that. And so it's, I see a lot of people, they get into this would be really great idea. I'd get into that, but then they're just not satisfied personally. And then they think, oh, I'm stuck. But doing that, getting out and saying, okay, what do I really want to do? What do I want to provide meaning for my life, and then to provide meaning for others? Because that's what a lot of veterans do. I mean, that's we all, signed up for different reasons, but at that basic level, it is service to others, that selflessness and sacrifice, that really supported people. So strategic volunteering is a huge issue, or a huge thing. It kind of helps develop that networking sense, make that connections in your community. And I mean, it opens up a whole different range of options that a lot of people, just because you were a carpenter in the Army, or really just because you were a Cav Scout or an infantry in the Marines, doesn't mean you have to follow that same path in the civilian world. You can reinvent yourself if it's possible, and you can reinvent yourself to do something that you really, really love.
Absolutely. Well, hey, Duane, we're getting towards the end of our time here. I would like to give you a chance for a shout out for a couple of the organizations, the websites that you're working for. And if you want to throw your contact info out, or tell us how, if there's somebody that's looking to get out, or maybe wanting to transition into the mental health nonprofit area, if they wanted to contact you for some info or advice, how would we get a hold of you?
Sure. So the one of the main ways is the Family Care Center website. So the family, it's www.fccsprings.com. So that's if you're here in the El Paso County, Colorado, Colorado Springs area, that we can definitely provide that support. And we have a wide range of clinicians, and we do a lot of different stuff here. And so are the nonprofit agency there as well. Another thing that I've started to do since I've gotten out is to write on a blog for a wider audience of veterans, the family members in their community. So you can find that at www.veteranmentalhealth.com. And then on there is my contact information, email. You can reach out. And this is really something for maybe somebody's not ready to sit down and talk to a therapist, or they think that it's all about Freud on the couch, or, talking about your mother. It's not really like that. So it's a different way of maybe learning some things and thinking about, it's not about weakness, kind of breaking the stigma. So the veteranmentalhealth.com blog is a really good place to start to reach out and contact me and any questions you may have.
All right, Duane, thanks for sharing your story, and great insight, some great golden nuggets, and some sage advice there. Definitely providing a different perspective and different outlook for veterans out there that are looking to transition. And I love changing things up a little bit. A lot of times we're talking about just regular hardcore business and stuff like that. So it was real nice and refreshing to hear that there are other things out there for veterans to do and choices that they have, and there's other ways for them to serve. It's not just about, even though we talk entrepreneurship all the time, we don't talk about I try to stay away from it's all about the money, because in the end it's not. Yeah. If you're chasing the dollar, that's not where you're going to find yourself happy. If the money comes along as a result, which it usually will if you're doing the right things, but ultimately it's solving problems and serving others as entrepreneurs, and that's exactly what you're doing in the mental health space. So appreciate what you're doing and the fact that you're continuing to serve veterans well into your retirement.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I appreciate the opportunity to talk, Joe, and I really, really commend you for doing what you're doing. And I always said, a lot of times the guns don't go silent, after the war is over, is in our memories or things like that. But veterans don't need to go silent either. And the more veterans that are out there telling their stories, doing what you're doing, getting the word out that, there is life after the Army. There is life after the Marines. There's an entire world outside the fence of the base. And that we veterans, we have the ability to make a huge impact on that world if we want to.
Absolutely. All right, Duane. Well, thanks again. And that's a wrap for this one. So these two veterans are Oscar Mike. As you can tell from listening to the Veteran on the Move podcast, interviews are a great way to tell your story and spread the word about your business. If you would like to get booked as a podcast guest, I recommend Interview Valet. You can check out Interview Valet at veteranonthemove.com/valet. Be sure to check out Thrive15.com, the world's premier online education platform that helps entrepreneurs, aspiring entrepreneurs, and intrapreneurs learn how to start or grow a successful business. Start your free 30-day membership by going to Thrive15.com and use the promo code VETERAN. Thank you for listening to Veteran on the Move, your pathfinder to freedom. If you like the show, leave us a review on iTunes. Reviews are always greatly appreciated. So until next time, this veteran is Oscar Mike.